Aliyah Boston took a forearm to the face in a retaliatory swing from Brittney Griner, caught on replay, away from the ball, and beyond any reasonable basketball context. But instead of headlines asking why it happened or how the league would respond, the narrative turned immediately. Did Boston provoke it? Was it just physical play? The spotlight moved from the action to the reaction, reframing a clear act of misconduct as a moment of competitive heat. For Boston and her Fever teammates, like Sydney Colson.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
This isn't new. It's a media pattern, one that trades victim accountability for storyline convenience. What Unrivaled claims to be a modern, ethical alternative to legacy leagues falls apart the moment it refuses to uphold its own standards. A league that permits mental health rest days and injury recovery protocols should not flinch when player safety is visibly violated on camera. But by skipping supplementary discipline and offering no official commentary, it's effectively condoning a system where harm is judged not by rules, but by who delivers it and who receives it. That's not just inconsistent. It's institutional failure masked by branding. So, let's talk about the mess that is Brittney Griner versus Aliyah Boston, or more specifically, how one of the most clear-cut post-play hits in recent memory somehow resulted in a common foul and total radio silence. Yes, silence. From the officials, from the league, and, frankly, from too many people who should know better. The facts are straightforward. Brittney Griner made contact with Aliyah Boston's face using a swinging arm motion. It didn't happen during a fast break. It wasn't a scramble for the ball. In fact, the ball wasn't even within a 3-foot radius of where the contact occurred. It happened after the play. The action was retaliatory, deliberate, and, let's be honest, not part of any legitimate basketball move. This was a response. A hit that followed a previous arms-tangled altercation that occurred just 25 seconds earlier. That context matters, because when you pair that timeline with the visual evidence, Griner's arm motion, Boston's reaction, and the ball being nowhere in sight, it becomes incredibly hard to excuse this as incidental contact. And yet, the referees ruled it a common foul. Not a flagrant, not even a technical, just a regular foul, as if a hit to the face after the whistle is business as usual in the Unrivaled league. The backlash online wasn't just about the play itself. It was about how blatant the non-response was. Because this isn't just a bad call. It's a window into a deeper issue. That disciplinary enforcement in women's basketball is being applied unevenly, especially when it involves players from the Indiana Fever. Aliyah Boston isn't a random name in this equation. She's one of several Fever players, along with Sydney Colson, J.C. Sheldon, and of course, Caitlin Clark, who've become lightning rods for physicality and controversy. Whether it's Kennedy Carter delivering a cheap shot or Angel Reese committing clear, flagrant fouls with minimal accountability, the pattern is consistent. When it happens to Indiana Fever players, it gets brushed off. When the roles are reversed, or when a high-profile player is involved, cue the outrage, the think pieces, and the immediate suspensions. So what makes this different? Well, this time the aggressor wasn't a bench player or someone new to the league. It was Brittney Griner, one of the most recognizable, decorated, and marketable names in women's basketball. And that's where things get sticky, because when a star like Griner is involved, all that progressive, player-first branding the Unrivaled league loves to promote starts to look pretty flimsy. Unrivaled has marketed itself as a safe, empowered, health-conscious alternative to traditional leagues. They say they put players first, that they support mental health, that they want a better, safer game. But when a hit to the face happens post-whistle in a moment totally disconnected from basketball, and they don't even review it, what exactly is being prioritized? It's not safety. It's not fairness. It's image. Because a 1 or 2 game suspension for retaliatory head contact isn't controversial. It's standard. In the NBA, in international leagues, anywhere with a functioning disciplinary system, this kind of action gets punished. Automatically. Not because it's a scandal, but because rules exist. Yet Unrivaled, a league with zero legacy red tape, somehow couldn't bring itself to enforce that standard. No post-game statement, no acknowledgement, not even a vague "we're reviewing it internally." Just silence. That silence says a lot. It says rules might only apply when it's convenient, that certain players may be untouchable, that the league would rather avoid a tough decision than risk upsetting a big name or its media partners, and that, more than anything, undermines the entire point of what Unrivaled claims to be. Because if safety is truly non-negotiable, why does it seem to fluctuate based on who throws the elbow and who takes it? That's the heart of what the original video commentary was trying to expose. It wasn't just breaking down a foul. It was pulling apart the way leagues, refs, and the media selectively apply justice based on jersey color, team affiliation, and media narrative. And the Indiana Fever? They've been in the crosshairs for months. Their players keep ending up in the center of physical, borderline violent incidents. And more often than not, those incidents go underpunished or completely ignored. But when someone touches a star player from a larger market or a player the league wants the spotlight, it's chaos, suspension, fine, outrage, inconsistency at its most transparent. So what's the common thread? The Fever's association with Caitlin Clark has made them both media darlings and lightning rods. And that polarization has a cost. Because now, when players like Boston get hit, the coverage doesn't start with what happened. It starts with, was she asking for it? It's a rhetorical bait and switch that fans are sick of seeing. And let's not ignore how the media fits into all this. Because instead of holding the league accountable for its silence, much of the coverage quietly pivoted towards soft-pedaling the incident. Debates started about Boston's role in the entanglement. People wondered if it was really that serious. The kind of reframing that, if the roles were reversed, wouldn't dare be entertained. This is how selective accountability becomes systemic. It's not about one moment. It's about what keeps happening when that moment is repeated with different names. Because if Aliyah Boston had swung on Griner, the response would have been instant. Review, suspension, statement. You know it. Everyone does. So when the same standard isn't applied the other way around, the credibility gap widens. And fans start asking uncomfortable questions, not just about the league, but about who gets protected, who gets ignored, and why. And here's where the institutional rot gets harder to ignore. Unrivaled isn't weighed down by decades of bureaucracy. They could have stepped up and done the right thing immediately, but they didn't. And that reveals something even more frustrating, that it's not about structural complexity. It's about cultural inertia. Even with a clean slate, Unrivaled defaulted to protecting hierarchy over integrity, to maintaining image over consistency. And that tells you everything you need to know about where power still sits in women's basketball. They want to talk the talk of equality and safety. But when those values get tested in real time, with real stakes, they blink, they bury, they ignore. And the fans? They notice. The players? They feel it. The trust that's supposed to be the foundation of a new league like this? It's already cracking. So where does that leave us? With a blatant foul that didn't get reviewed, with a victim who got dismissed, and with a league that failed to live up to the very principles it was built on. All while a community of fans, athletes, and commentators are left filling in the silence with their own outrage, speculation, and receipts. And no, Brittney Griner wasn't banned. She wasn't arrested. That part? Fiction. But the fact that so many people believed that headline, that tells you exactly how deep this credibility problem runs. Because when a story like that sounds more plausible than what actually happened, that's not just a PR issue. That's a values issue. So now it's your turn. Was this a foul that should have been upgraded? Was the league's silence unacceptable? Should Unrivaled be doing more to prove that their rules apply to everyone, not just the players who sell jerseys? Drop a comment, share this with someone who's been following the saga, and hit subscribe if you're here for the conversations that sports media doesn't want to have out loud. Because this story, it's not going anywhere. And here we are, still waiting. Still no review. Still no league action. And still stuck in this surreal moment where a professional league, built on the promise of fairness and progress, managed to fumble its very first public test of accountability. Unrivaled called itself a player-first league. But let's be honest, for Aliyah Boston, That promise rang hollow the second her face caught Brittney Griner's arm, and the league chose to pretend it was just another foul. No follow-up, no upgraded ruling, no acknowledgement that something clearly outside the bounds of basketball happened on their court, under their banner. This wasn't a gray area flop. This wasn't a judgment call about hand-checking or elbow space in the paint. This was a retaliatory strike, delivered after the whistle, when the ball wasn't even close. And somehow, that didn't warrant further attention. It's hard to overstate how much that undermines not just the legitimacy of this specific league, but trust in professional women's basketball enforcement overall. Because now fans are asking, what are we even doing here? You can't build a league on hashtags and mental health talking points if you're not going to back them up with actual structural integrity. Progressive doesn't mean just saying nice things. It means making tough calls when your biggest names cross the line. If Unrivaled isn't willing to apply that standard equally, then it's just rebranding the same institutional double standards with new colors and cleaner graphics. And what makes this worse, what really drags it from frustrating to insulting, is that the inconsistency isn't subtle. It's glaring. Let's look at how other players, particularly Indiana Fever players, have been treated. Because there's a running list at this point. Kennedy Carter shoves Caitlin Clark from behind. Huge backlash. Angel Reese gets flagged for repeat physicality. Headlines. J.C. Sheldon takes hard contact and gets zero protection. Over and over again, the pattern is clear. When it happens to the Fever or their extended orbit, it's brushed off, minimized, or justified. And now Aliyah Boston, arguably one of the most consistent, composed professionals in the game, gets clocked across the face after the whistle. And the league's response is basically, move along, nothing to see here. Let's be very real. If the roles had been reversed, if Boston had swung on Griner, we'd be talking about a multi-game suspension minimum. There'd be a league statement. There'd be media speculation about Boston's temperament, about whether she had control issues. The double standard is screaming at us. But that's what happens when a league's actions are dictated by narrative convenience. Because Griner? She's marketable. She's been through a highly publicized ordeal. She's central to the Unrivaled brand. She brings views, headlines, engagement. And when players become symbols, leagues get nervous about holding them accountable. That's not fairness. That's PR strategy. And it completely erodes any faith fans or players had in the league's values. If safety is conditional, if disciplinary action is selective, then everything else collapses under it. You can't talk about equity while ignoring blatantly unequal enforcement. You can't claim to care about wellness while letting players get hit with no consequences. You can't say you're new and different if your policies only protect your most profitable faces. This is the part that hits the hardest for the players, especially the ones who don't have shoe deals, big market teams, or legacy status. Because now they know if someone fouls them hard, if someone retaliates against them, it might not be worth the league's time. That isn't just bad optics. That's dangerous. Because in professional sports, trust and enforcement is the foundation of the game. Players need to believe that when the whistle blows, someone is watching. That retaliation will be punished. That the rules are more than just suggestions for the less famous. But after what happened to Boston, that belief is slipping. It's not just that Griner wasn't suspended. It's not even just that the refs missed the call in real time. It's that after the fact, when the league had time to review the footage, to talk to officials, to do something, they didn't. They sat on their hands. They waited it out. And what that tells players, whether they say it out loud or not, is that the league's silence is the policy, which is terrifying. Because what happens next time? What happens when a player goes a little further? When a retaliation turns into an injury? Will the league still be reviewing it internally while the rest of us can see the slow-motion replay 10 times over? Fans aren't dumb. The internet isn't quiet. The footage is everywhere. We saw it. The hit wasn't ambiguous. The contact was real. The intent was clear. The ball wasn't in play. This wasn't basketball. So why is the reaction being treated like it was? It's the same reason media coverage has tiptoed around the incident. It's the same reason Unrivaled won't go near it. Because disciplining Brittney Griner doesn't fit the marketing plan. Because calling out one of your biggest stars for crossing the line means putting values over visibility. And that's not something most sports organizations have ever been willing to do. But this league didn't sell itself as most sports organizations. This league said it would be different. And now we know that difference was surface level. Let's not forget the wider implications here. If this is how Unrivaled handles clear misconduct, then what else will they ignore? What other lines are they willing to blur to protect an image? Because it's not just about one swing, one call, or one silence. It's about whether any of this actually means anything. That's why fans are frustrated. That's why players are side-eyeing. Because when a new league gets caught repeating the same old mistakes, it feels like a betrayal. They had a chance to lead, to show what real accountability looks like, to treat every player, regardless of clout or market size, with the same level of respect and protection. Instead, they gave us more of the same, just with better lighting. The irony here is that Unrivaled is exactly the kind of league that should be getting these things right. It doesn't have the excuse of being buried under decades of legacy contracts and institutional rot. It's young. It's flexible. It can make changes fast. It can build better structures. It has every advantage to do things differently. And yet, when it came time to prove that commitment, to take a clear, decisive stance on something as basic as retaliatory contact after the whistle, they folded. Not just folded, they vanished. That's not leadership. That's cowardice in a hoodie. So where does that leave us now? With a league that's taken its first credibility hit and earned it. With a fan base that's watching more closely than ever. With players who now know, explicitly, that star status shields you. And with a question echoing louder by the day. If players' safety is supposed to be non-negotiable, then why does it feel like it's still for sale? There's no ban, no arrest. That part's fake. But the hit was real. The silence is real. And the fallout? That's just beginning. Because how can we let this slide when it's not just about one elbow? It's about the fact that every time something like this happens and nothing gets done, another crack forms in the foundation. Every time a league looks the other way, players lose a little more faith. Fans lose a little more trust. And eventually, all the messaging in the world about empowerment, safety, fairness start to sound like background noise. Because the actions don't match the branding. This wasn't just a botched on-court decision. This was the league's first real test of its values under pressure. And instead of stepping up and proving that those values hold up when a big name crosses the line, Unrivaled stayed silent. Worse, they acted like the incident never happened. And it sends a message, loud and clear. It says, if you're a star, you're safe. If you're marketable, you're untouchable. And if you're not either, good luck. What's even more frustrating is that Unrivaled had every tool to get this right. There's no excuse of the process takes time. There's no bloated disciplinary bureaucracy to navigate. They could have reviewed the footage. They could have upgraded the foul. They could have issued a one-game suspension, or at the very least, made a public statement acknowledging that the contact was unacceptable. But they didn't. And now, the league has not only failed to protect one of its players, they've also exposed a painful truth, that when it comes to player safety, there are tiers. Not everyone gets the same rules. Not everyone gets the same protection. You're either valuable to the league's image or you're disposable. Aliyah Boston deserved better. She deserved at least the dignity of a response. Acknowledgement. Something. Instead, she got gaslight by omission. The hit to the face was treated like a casual bump, and her reaction, her lack of reaction, was used against her. Because she didn't blow up, because she stayed calm, because she didn't escalate the situation, it became easier to dismiss the entire thing. That's another layer of this that makes people furious. The burden is constantly placed on the targeted player to respond the right way. Stay professional. Don't cause a scene. Let the league handle it. But what happens when the league doesn't handle it? Then the silence becomes the punishment. Not for the one who threw the elbow, but for the one who took it. That's the dynamic that fans are reacting to now. That's why this story hit such a nerve. Because when you look at the broader pattern, this isn't an isolated failure. It's just the latest data point in a growing trend. And let's be honest, people want to believe in Unrivaled. The women's basketball community is starved for innovation, for leagues that actually care about the athletes, for alternatives to the status quo. So when a league comes along and says all the right things about safety, about recovery, about equity, fans don't just listen. They buy in. That's what makes this betrayal sting. It's not just the lack of accountability for Griner. It's that Unrivaled broke the unspoken deal, the trust contract, the belief that this league would be different, that this time values wouldn't be flexible, that favoritism wouldn't shape policy. But then a high-profile player hits someone across the face after the play ends, and suddenly all that player-first energy disappears. The league had a clean slate. It chose to paint over it with old patterns. And the ripple effects aren't going away. This isn't something fans are going to forget after one news cycle. This moment will be brought up every time another incident happens. Every time another player gets fouled hard. Every time Unrivaled tries to talk about its commitment to safety. Because the receipts are permanent now. The footage exists. The silence exists. You don't get to erase it with a marketing campaign. And the media? The way this story was spun, or rather, not spun, is part of the problem too. The shift from was this misconduct to was Boston being too physical earlier is textbook deflection. It's the sports version of victim blaming. And it happens so often to Indiana Fever players that it's no longer subtle. The narrative convenience is wild. When a high-profile star lashes out, the spotlight shifts. It's always what was their build-up? Was there context? Was there provocation? But when it's a less visible player or someone on the wrong side of the media's favorite storylines, it becomes this is unacceptable. Suspend her. How is anyone supposed to believe in fairness when that is the dynamic? And again, none of this is about turning Brittney Griner into a villain. No one's saying she should be banished or canceled, but what she should be, held to the same standard as everyone else. That's the whole point. Equality isn't about punishing stars harder. It's about punishing everyone the same. It's about saying that no matter how many medals you've won, no matter how many interviews you've done, if you hit someone in the face after the play, there are consequences. That standard shouldn't be negotiable. But apparently, it is. So now the question becomes, what happens next time? What happens when a rising star gets hit? What happens when someone retaliates harder? If the league stays quiet again, then what? Are we supposed to believe that a dangerous precedent isn't being set? Because it is. Unrivaled has now told its players, explicitly, that some infractions aren't worth reviewing if the wrong person commits them. And that message? It spreads. It breeds resentment. It creates rifts. You can't build a healthy culture on that. And you definitely can't build a lasting league. So if Unrivaled wants to fix this, it starts by addressing what happened, not pretending it didn't. It starts with acknowledging the inconsistency, updating their disciplinary protocols, and showing with actions, not words, that no one is above the rules. Because without that, this won't just be a blip. It'll be a defining moment, and not in a good way. So what do you think? Should Griner have faced suspension? Did the league fail Boston, and by extension, every player looking to them for protection? Are we watching a new league fall into the same old traps? Let's talk about it. Drop a comment below. Share this with someone who's been side-eyeing that common foul call since the clip hit the timeline, and don't forget to subscribe so you're here when the next story drops. Because if this is how Unrivaled handles controversy, something tells me this won't be the last time they're in the spotlight for the wrong reasons.